The sterile fluorescent lights of Detroit Medical Center's emergency room hummed above me like angry bees. I sat in one of those hard plastic chairs that seemed designed to make waiting even more unbearable, my left arm throbbing despite the temporary splint the paramedics had applied. The fall had been stupid, reaching for a box on the top shelf of my garage, the ladder shifting, and then the sickening crack as my 72-year-old body hit the concrete floor. I'm Robert Hayes, and I'd lived in Detroit my whole life, watched the city rise and fall and struggle to rise again, built a successful automotive parts business from nothing, raised 2 sons in a modest house in Palmer Woods, buried my wife Margaret 5 years ago, and thought I'd figured out how to navigate old age with dignity. That November afternoon proved I hadn't figured out anything at all. My younger son Marcus had found me in the garage. He'd stopped by to borrow my table saw, always borrowing tools, that boy, never buying his own despite having a good job as an electrician. He'd called 911, ridden with me in the ambulance, his face tight with worry as he held my good hand. At the hospital, he'd helped me through intake, answered the medical history questions I was too fuzzy to remember, and stayed by my side while we waited for x-rays. "Dad, I need to run home real quick," Marcus said, checking his phone for what felt like the 100th time. "Keisha just texted. The babysitter had to leave early, and the kids are home alone. I'll be back in 45 minutes tops. You good here?" I looked at my son, 43 years old, still had that same eager-to-please expression he'd worn as a kid. His wife Keisha worked nights as a nurse, and their 3 kids were 8, 6, and 4. Good kids. I saw them every Sunday for dinner. "I'm fine," I said, though my arm was screaming and I felt about 100 years old. "Go take care of those babies. I'm just waiting for x-rays anyway. Nothing you can do here." "You sure?" He was already standing, keys in hand. "I hate leaving you alone. Marcus, I survived 72 years, including your teenage years. I think I can handle sitting in a waiting room. Go." He squeezed my shoulder gently, careful not to jostle my injured arm. 45 minutes, Dad. I promise. Wait here, I'll be back." I watched him disappear through the automatic doors, his jacket flapping as he jogged toward the parking lot. The clock on the wall read 2:47 p.m. I settled back in my chair, trying to find a position that didn't make my arm scream, and prepared to wait. The ER was moderately busy for a Tuesday afternoon. A mother with a feverish toddler sat across from me, bouncing the kid on her knee and singing softly. An older man clutched his chest, his wife's hand tight in his. A teenager with what looked like a basketball injury sprawled in a corner, earbuds in, completely absorbed in his phone, the usual parade of human frailty and bad luck. By 3:30, I'd been called back for x-rays. The technician was a cheerful young woman who reminded me of my granddaughter, all efficiency and gentle handling. The x-rays confirmed what I'd suspected. A clean break of the radius, would need a cast, maybe 6 weeks of healing. Could have been worse, the doctor said. At my age, I should be grateful it wasn't my hip. By 4:15, I was back in the waiting room, arm now properly set and encased in a bright blue fiberglass cast. The doctor had given me a prescription for pain medication and instructions to follow up with an orthopedist in a week. I was cleared to go home, just needed Marcus to drive me since the pain meds made me too fuzzy to drive myself. I tried calling his cell, straight to voicemail. By 5, I'd left 3 messages. The waiting room was getting busier now, evening rush bringing in new casualties. I was taking up a chair someone else probably needed, but I had no way to get home. My house was 15 miles away, too far to walk, even if my arm wasn't broken. By 6, I'd called Marcus's house. No answer. Called Keisha's cell, but she was probably at work already. Left messages everywhere, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. By 7, I was past irritation and into anger. 3 hours and 45 minutes since Marcus had promised 45 minutes tops. Something must have happened. An accident, maybe. One of the kids got hurt. But wouldn't someone have called me? Wouldn't the hospital have been contacted? I tried my older son, David. He answered on the third ring, his voice tinged with the impatience of a busy man interrupted. David was a corporate attorney in Chicago, had moved there right after law school, and visited Detroit maybe twice a year, if I was lucky. "Dad, what's wrong?" "I'm at Detroit Medical Center. Broke my arm. Marcus brought me but had to leave. Said he'd be back in 45 minutes. That was over 4 hours ago. I can't reach him." A pause. "Did you try his cell?" "Of course I tried his cell, David. I'm not senile. It goes straight to voicemail. Maybe his battery died." "Did you try Keisha?" "She's at work. David, I need someone to pick me up. I can't drive with this arm, and I've been sitting here for—" "Dad, I'm in Chicago. I can't just drop everything and drive 5 hours to Detroit. Can't you take an Uber?" I stared at my phone, wondering when my son had become this person. I'm 72 years old with a broken arm and pain medication in my system. I'm not getting in a car with a stranger. "Then call one of your friends." "Harold, maybe, or someone from church." Harold had died 6 months ago. David would have known that if he ever called me, and most of my church friends were my age or older, dealing with their own health issues. But I was too tired and too angry to explain all that. "Never mind," I said. "I'll figure it out." "Dad, don't be like that. I'm in the middle of a major case. I can't just—" I hung up. Rude, probably. But I was sitting in a hospital waiting room, abandoned by both my sons in different ways, and I didn't have the energy for David's excuses. By 8 p.m., I'd exhausted every option I could think of. Finally swallowed my pride and approached the intake nurse, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and an air of having seen everything. "Ma'am, I hate to bother you, but I've been here since early afternoon. My son was supposed to pick me up hours ago, and I can't reach him." "I don't suppose there's any way to find out if he was brought in." "Marcus Hayes." She checked her computer, sympathy evident in her expression. "No Marcus Hayes admitted today, honey. You got anyone else who can come get you?" "Not really," I admitted. The words felt heavy, shameful somehow. 72 years old and no one to call in an emergency. "Tell you what," she said, lowering her voice. "We're not supposed to do this, but let me call you a cab on the hospital account. Get you home safe. You can settle up with them later." I wanted to refuse, to maintain some dignity, but my arm hurt, I was exhausted, and pride seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford right then. "Thank you, I appreciate that." The cab ride home cost $43 that I paid with cash. I kept in my wallet for emergencies. The driver helped me to my door, waited to make sure I got inside safely. Small kindnesses from strangers while my own son's promise, "Wait here, I'll be back," echoed mockingly in my head. My house felt too quiet, too empty. Margaret's absence hit me fresh, the way it sometimes did when I was vulnerable. She would have known what to do, would have had opinions about Marcus's disappearance and David's dismissal, would have made me tea and helped me into comfortable clothes, and told me stories to take my mind off the pain. But Margaret was 5 years gone, and I was alone in a house that suddenly felt too big for one old man with a broken arm. I managed to get out of my clothes and into pajamas, one-handed, a process that took 20 frustrating minutes. Took my pain medication with a glass of water and settled into my recliner, too tired to make it upstairs to bed. The TV played some mindless sitcom I wasn't really watching, just noise to fill the silence. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Marcus, finally. "Dad! Oh my God! Dad, I'm so sorry! My phone died and then—" "Where were you?" My voice came out flat, emotionless. Safer than the anger churning underneath. "The kids. There was this situation with Jaden. He fell, and we thought maybe he broke his arm too, so we took him to urgent care. And my phone was dead and I couldn't charge it in the car because I forgot my cable and... Is Jaden okay? I cut through the excuses. Yeah, just a bad sprain. They wrapped it and sent us home. But Dad, I'm so sorry. I know I said 45 minutes and I just... You left me there for 7 hours, Marcus. Silence on the other end. Then, I know, I messed up. I'm sorry, did you get home okay? Had to take a cab. Hospital arranged it since I couldn't reach you or your brother. You called David. He's in Chicago. Told me to take an Uber. I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. That sounds like David, Marcus muttered. Look, I'll come over first thing tomorrow. Make sure you're settled. Bring you groceries, whatever you need. Don't bother. The words came out before I could stop them. Dad, I'm tired, Marcus. My arm hurts, and I'm tired. I'll talk to you later. I hung up before he could respond, before the anger could spill over into something uglier. Sat there in my recliner, cast heavy on my arm, wondering when exactly my sons had stopped being the boys I'd raised and become these strangers who couldn't be relied on when it mattered. The pain medication was kicking in, making everything fuzzy around the edges. I closed my eyes and thought about that moment on the ladder, the split second before falling when everything was still fine, when I still believed that family meant something, that promises made, wait here, I'll be back, were promises kept. Sleep took me eventually, fitful and full of dreams, where I waited in endless rooms while people I loved walked away, their voices fading. I'll be back, I'll be back, I'll be back. But nobody ever came back. Nobody ever did. The next 6 weeks became a masterclass in the difference between what people said and what they actually did. Marcus showed up the morning after my ER disaster, full of apologies and promises. He brought groceries, helped me organize my medications, set up a system so I could manage with one arm. His guilt was palpable, and part of me wanted to forgive him immediately, the way I always had when he was a kid making mistakes. But something had shifted in me during those 7 hours in that waiting room, something that wouldn't let me just brush it off and move on. I really am sorry, Dad, Marcus said for probably the 10th time as he stocked my refrigerator. Jaden was crying, and Keisha was panicking, and I just lost track of time. It won't happen again. It's fine, Marcus. The words were automatic, meaningless. We both knew it wasn't fine, but neither of us knew how to talk about what it actually was. He stayed for an hour, setting up my coffee maker so I could operate it one-handed, bringing in firewood for the fireplace, checking that I had everything I needed. When he left, he promised to call every day, to check in, to make sure I was okay. He called twice that first week, then once the second week. By week 3, I hadn't heard from him in 10 days. David, to my surprise, did call. Once. A brief conversation where he asked about my arm, mentioned his case was going well, and suggested I hire a home health aide if I needed help. When I pointed out that I'd raised 2 sons who should be checking on their elderly father, he got defensive. Dad, I live 5 hours away. What exactly do you expect me to do from Chicago? Call more than once every 6 weeks. Show some interest in my life. Act like you give a damn whether I'm alive or dead. That's not fair. I'm busy, I have a career, I can't just drop everything every time you have a minor injury. A broken arm at 72 isn't minor, David. And I'm not asking you to drop everything, I'm asking you to act like family. He'd made an excuse about another call coming in and hung up. I hadn't heard from him since. The pattern that emerged over those weeks was depressingly clear. My sons had lives that didn't include me, except as an obligation they could check off when convenient. Marcus was drowning in his own family responsibilities, always meaning well, but never quite following through. David had moved on to a life where Detroit and his father were distant memories he visited out of duty, not love. I'd raised them better than this. Or at least I thought I had. Margaret and I had worked hard to give our boys everything. Not material things, we weren't wealthy, but time, attention, values. I'd coached their little league teams, attended every school event, taught them about integrity and responsibility. Margaret had filled our home with books and music and home-cooked meals, created a haven where they felt safe and loved. Where had we gone wrong? It was my neighbor, Dorothy Chen, who became my unexpected lifeline during those weeks. Dorothy was 68, a retired school teacher who'd lived next door for 15 years. We'd always been friendly, waving hello, occasional conversations about the neighborhood, but nothing deep. She noticed I was struggling. One morning, about 2 weeks after my fall, I found her on my porch with a container of still warm soup and a determined expression. "Robert Hayes, I've been watching you try to get your garbage cans to the curb one-handed for 3 days now. This is ridiculous. I'm helping whether you like it or not." I wanted to refuse, to maintain my independence and pride. But the soup smelled amazing, and I was so damn tired of struggling alone. "I don't want to be a burden," I said weakly. "Then don't be stupid about accepting help," she replied tartly. "I'm retired, my kids live in California, and I've got nothing but time. Let me help. We'll call it being neighborly." Dorothy became a regular presence in my life. She brought meals several times a week, not out of pity, but because, as she said, she enjoyed cooking and hated eating alone. She helped with tasks that were impossible one-handed. She drove me to my orthopedist appointments when Marcus was too busy and David was too far away. And slowly she became a friend, a real friend, not the surface-level friendships I'd maintained with people from work or church. We talked about everything: our late spouses, our disappointing children, the changes in Detroit, politics, books, life. "Your sons know you broke your arm, right?" Dorothy asked one afternoon as we sat on my porch, watching the November rain. "They know," I said, "and they're just not here. Marcus comes by occasionally, when he remembers. David calls every couple weeks. They're busy with their own lives." Dorothy shook her head. "My daughter calls me 3 times a week from San Francisco. Visits twice a year, brings the grandkids. My son's in Seattle, calls every Sunday like clockwork. They're busy too. Everyone's busy. That's not an excuse." "Different families, different dynamics," I said, defensive despite knowing she was right. "Robert, you deserve better than sons who treat you like an obligation." The words landed hard because they were true. Somewhere along the way, I'd become optional in my sons' lives. The realization hurt more than my broken arm ever had. It was during one of those conversations with Dorothy that the idea first took root. We were talking about estate planning. She'd recently updated her will, wanted to make sure her kids didn't fight over anything when she was gone. "I keep my will simple," she said. "Everything's split evenly between my 2 kids, some specific items labeled for the grandkids. What about you?" "I'd drawn up my will years ago, right after Margaret died. Standard stuff, everything split equally between Marcus and David. The house, my savings, my business assets. I'd built a decent estate over the years, nothing extravagant but comfortable, enough to make a real difference in my sons' lives." "Equal split," I said. "Drawn up 5 years ago. Haven't thought about it much since." "Might want to review it," Dorothy suggested. "Make sure it still reflects your wishes." Her words echoed in my head over the following days. Did my will still reflect my wishes? Did I want to leave everything to sons who couldn't be bothered to check on me regularly, who'd left me stranded in a hospital, who treated me like an inconvenient obligation? The anger I'd been suppressing since that day in the ER started bubbling up, not hot rage, but cold clarity. My sons had made choices about what kind of relationship they wanted with me. Maybe it was time I made some choices too. I was still mulling this over when Thanksgiving arrived. Marcus invited me to his house for dinner, the same invitation he extended every year. Usually I went, enjoyed time with my grandkids, pretended everything was fine. This year, I declined. "Come on, Dad," Marcus said over the phone. "The kids want to see you. Keisha's making your favorite sweet potato pie." "I'm not feeling up to it," I said, not entirely a lie. My arm still ached and I was tired. "But it's Thanksgiving. You can't spend it alone." "I'll be fine, Marcus. You enjoy your family." The hurt in his voice was evident. "You're my family too, Dad." "Am I?" The question came out sharper than intended. "Because family shows up, Marcus. Family keeps their promises. Family doesn't leave their 72-year-old father sitting in a hospital for 7 hours." Silence. "Then I apologized for that, multiple times." "What more do you want from me?" What did I want? For him to actually mean it, for him to change his behavior instead of just feeling guilty, for him to prioritize me the way I'd always prioritized him. I don't know, Marcus. I honestly don't know anymore. I spent Thanksgiving with Dorothy. She'd invited me weeks earlier, and I'd initially declined, not wanting to impose. But after turning down Marcus, being alone felt unbearable. Dorothy welcomed me warmly, introduced me to her video call setup so we could have dinner with her kids in California via computer. It was strange but lovely, hearing her daughter and son check in on their mother, share their lives, express genuine interest and affection. This is what it should look like, I thought. This is what family should be. "Your kids seem wonderful," I told Dorothy as we cleaned up after dinner. "They're not perfect," she said. "We've had our struggles. But we prioritize each other. They know I'm there for them and they're there for me. It's reciprocal the way it should be." Reciprocal? When had my relationships with my sons stopped being reciprocal? The orthopedist cleared me to have my cast removed the first week of December. Marcus had promised to take me to the appointment, but called that morning to cancel. Something about a work emergency. Could I reschedule? Dorothy drove me instead. The cast came off, revealing pale, weak skin underneath. I'd need physical therapy to regain full strength, but the bone had healed well. At 72, I was lucky. "All set?" Dorothy asked as I emerged from the exam room. "All set," I confirmed. Then, on impulse, "Can we make a stop on the way home? I need to see my lawyer." Gerald Morrison had been my attorney for 30 years, handled my business contracts, drafted my will, guided me through the legal aftermath of Margaret's death. He was semi-retired now, but still took my calls. "Robert!" He greeted me warmly in his downtown Detroit office. "Good to see you up and about. I heard about your arm. How are you healing?" "Better," I said. "Gerald, I need to revise my will." He pulled out a legal pad, all business. Significant changes. I took a deep breath, feeling Dorothy's supportive presence beside me. "Yes, I want to remove my sons as beneficiaries." Gerald's pen stopped moving. Both of them. Both of them. "Robert, that's a major decision. Have you thought this through? Sometimes when we're upset—" "I've thought about nothing else for weeks," I interrupted. "My sons have made it clear through their actions that I'm not a priority in their lives. David lives in Chicago and barely acknowledges my existence. Marcus is here in Detroit but can't be relied on when it matters. I was left in a hospital waiting room for 7 hours, Gerald. 7 hours after being told I'll be back in 45 minutes. I laid it all out. Not just that one incident, but the pattern of years, the missed calls and forgotten promises, the obligations fulfilled minimally, the love expressed in words but not actions, the slow realization that I'd become someone they tolerated rather than valued." Gerald listened, taking notes, his expression neutral but thoughtful. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I understand you're hurt, Robert. What you're describing is real and valid, but cutting your sons out entirely, that's permanent. That's a statement that can't be taken back. Are you sure this is what you want?" "What I want is sons who act like they care whether I live or die," I said. "But since I can't have that, I'll settle for not rewarding them for treating me like an inconvenience. Where do you want your estate to go instead? I'd thought about this. Split it. After Dorothy Chen for her kindness and genuine friendship, the other half divided among charities, programs for seniors, medical research, community development in Detroit, people and organizations actually making a difference. And nothing to your grandchildren? That one stung. I loved Marcus's kids. But they were young, wouldn't understand anyway, and leaving them money while cutting out their father felt cruel in a different way. Nothing, I said firmly. Clean break. Gerald drafted the changes over the next hour. Dorothy waited in the reception area, reading a magazine, giving me privacy. When the new will was ready, I read through it carefully. It felt surreal, seeing my son's names absent from the document, replaced by charitable organizations and my neighbor. Once you sign this, it's done, Gerald warned. You can change it again later, of course, but this is legally binding the moment you sign. My hand hesitated over the paper. This was it, the point of no return. A choice that would fundamentally alter my relationship with my sons, assuming we still had one after this. I thought about that waiting room, about 7 hours of abandonment, about promises broken and calls unreturned, and the slow, painful realization that I'd spent 30 years building relationships that weren't actually reciprocal. I signed. I'll need witnesses, Gerald said, calling in his assistant and paralegal. They witnessed my signature, added their own, made it official. You should tell your sons, Gerald advised, as I prepared to leave. Don't let them find out after you're gone. Give them a chance to understand why you made this choice. Maybe, I said non-committally. Part of me wanted to tell them, wanted them to know the consequences of their actions. But another part, the tired, hurt part, just wanted to move on, to stop hoping for something that clearly wasn't coming. Dorothy was quiet on the drive home. Finally, as we pulled into our neighborhood, she spoke. Are you okay with what you just did? I don't know, I admitted. But I know I couldn't leave things the way they were, couldn't reward behavior that hurt me. Does that make me petty? It makes you human, she said gently. And Robert? You don't owe anyone access to your estate, not even family, especially not family who treats you like an obligation. That night, alone in my too-quiet house, I looked at the copy of my new will, read through the clauses that explicitly excluded my sons, explained my reasoning, made my intentions crystal clear. It felt both empowering and devastating. My phone rang. Marcus, calling for his weekly check-in that had become bi-weekly, then monthly. Hey, Dad, how was the appointment cast off? Yeah, all set. I didn't mention Dorothy driving me, the stop at Gerald's office, the decision that would change everything. That's great. Listen, I was thinking maybe this weekend I could come by. We could watch the Lions game together like we used to. Like we used to. When had we stopped? Whose choice had that been? Maybe, I said. I'll let you know. Okay. Well, feel better. Love you, Dad. Love you too, son. I hung up, wondering if that was true anymore. Did I still love them? Or was I just going through the motions, honoring what used to be rather than what actually was? The answer, I realized, didn't matter. Love or not, I'd made my choice. My sons would inherit nothing but the consequences of treating their father like he didn't matter, and somehow that felt like exactly the right thing to do. Christmas approached with the relentless cheer that made my isolation even more apparent. The neighborhood filled with lights and decorations, families gathering, the endless cultural message that this was a time for togetherness. I put up a small tree, more out of habit than enthusiasm, and accepted Dorothy's invitation to join her for Christmas dinner via video call with her California family. It was David who inadvertently forced the confrontation I'd been both dreading and wanting. He called 3 days before Christmas, his voice bright with false cheer that immediately set my teeth on edge. "Dad! Merry early Christmas! Listen, I'm actually going to be in Detroit for New Year's. Big case settled early, and I thought I'd come see you. Maybe stay a few days, catch up properly." My first instinct was suspicion. David hadn't volunteered to visit in over 2 years. "What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to see my father?" He sounded hurt, but it rang hollow. "I know I haven't been around much. Thought I'd make it right. Bit late for that, isn't it?" Silence on his end, then carefully, "Dad, are you still upset about the hospital thing? That was months ago. Marcus said you've been distant." "Marcus talks to you about me? Sometimes we're both worried. You didn't come to Thanksgiving. You've been declining invitations. Dorothy Chen apparently spends more time with you than we do." "Dorothy doesn't leave me stranded in hospital waiting rooms for 7 hours. "Here we go again," David sighed. "Dad," Marcus apologized. "His kid was hurt. What do you want from him? From us?" The question hung there, the same one Marcus had asked. What did I want? I'd spent weeks pondering it, and the answer had become painfully clear. "I want you to care, David. Actually care, not just go through the motions when it's convenient. I want phone calls that aren't obligatory. I want visits that aren't motivated by guilt. I want to matter to my sons the way you both still matter to me, even though you probably don't deserve it anymore. That's not fair. You called me once after I broke my arm. Once, David. Your 72-year-old father had a serious injury, and you called once in 6 weeks. You told me to hire help instead of offering to come yourself. You dismissed my pain like it was an inconvenience to your schedule. I live in Chicago. I have a career, responsibilities. So did I when you were growing up." I cut him off. "I had a business to run, employees to manage, deadlines to meet, but I still made it to every baseball game, every parent-teacher conference, every moment that mattered to you, because that's what parents do, what family does. We're not kids anymore, Dad. Adult relationships are different. We have our own lives, and apparently those lives don't include me, except as an afterthought." The words came out tired, resigned. "You know what, David? Don't bother coming for New Year's. We both know you don't really want to be here. You're just checking a box, fulfilling an obligation. I'm tired of being an obligation." "Dad, that's not—" I hung up. Immediately the phone rang again, David calling back. I declined the call. He tried twice more, then apparently gave up. Within an hour, Marcus called. I let it go to voicemail. Then again, and again. Finally, I answered. "What did you say to David?" Marcus demanded, skipping any greeting. "He just called me, said you told him not to visit, that you're cutting us off." "I didn't cut anyone off. I just stopped pretending that our relationship is something it's not." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done, Marcus. Done making excuses for you both. Done accepting breadcrumbs and calling it love. Done waiting for you to show up, literally and figuratively. This is about the hospital thing, isn't it? Dad, I've apologized 100 times. And nothing changed." My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. "You apologized, promised to do better, and then what? You disappeared again. Missed calls, broken promises, another month where I barely heard from you. Your apology meant nothing because your behavior didn't change. I have 3 kids and a wife and a full-time job. I'm doing my best. Your best isn't good enough, Marcus. Not anymore. I'm 72 years old. I don't have unlimited time left to wait for you to figure out how to be a decent son." The words hung heavy between us. I could hear Marcus breathing on the other end, processing. "So what? You're just done with us? We're your sons, Dad. Your family. You can't just quit on family." "You quit on me first," I said quietly. "You both did. Years ago, probably. I just finally noticed. That's not true. When's the last time you called me just to talk? Not because you needed something or felt guilty, but just because you wanted to hear my voice. When's the last time David visited without it being a holiday or obligation? When's the last time either of you made me feel like I mattered more than the effort it took to maintain contact? Silence. The fact that he couldn't answer immediately told me everything. I thought so, I said. Marcus, I love you. I love David. I always will. But I don't like who you've become, either of you. And I'm too old to keep investing in relationships that aren't reciprocal. What does that mean, reciprocal? His voice had gone quiet, uncertain. It means I give and you take. I show up and you don't. I prioritize you while you fit me in when convenient. That's not a relationship, Marcus. That's me being used. We don't use you. Then what do you call it? You borrow my tools and forget to return them. You ask me to babysit when Keisha's working and you're stuck. You call when you need advice or money or help. But when I needed you, really needed you, broken arms, scared, in pain, where were you? I explained that. Jaden was hurt. For 7 hours? It took 7 hours to handle a sprained wrist? You couldn't find a charger for your phone in 7 hours? You couldn't have Keisha call me, or use someone else's phone, or send me a message somehow? Marcus, you forgot about me. Admit it. You got caught up in your own crisis and completely forgot your father was sitting in a hospital waiting for you. Did you? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, barely audible, I'm sorry. I know you are. You're always sorry. But sorry without change is just manipulation. It's asking for forgiveness while planning to hurt someone the same way again. That's not fair, Dad. I'm trying. Are you? Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you're doing the bare minimum to maintain the appearance of a relationship while putting in no actual effort. And you know what? I'm done accepting that. I deserve better. What do you want from me? Marcus's voice cracked with frustration. Tell me what you want and I'll do it. I want you to want to do it, I said simply. I want you to call because you miss me, not because you feel guilty. I want you to visit because you value my company, not because it's expected. I want to matter to you, Marcus, actually matter. And I'm tired of having to ask for that. You do matter. Prove it. With actions, not words. Show me that I'm more than an obligation or an inconvenience. Show me that our relationship is worth maintaining. And if I do, will you, I don't know, forgive us? Go back to normal? I thought about my new will, locked in Gerald's safe. About the decision I'd already made, the bridge I'd already burned. I don't know what normal looks like anymore, Marcus. Maybe we need to build something new instead of trying to resurrect something that's been dead for years. Jesus, Dad, that's harsh. It's honest. For the first time in a long time, I'm being completely honest with you both. And if you can't handle that, if you need me to keep pretending everything's fine, then we really don't have anything left to talk about. Another long silence. Then, I need to think about this, process what you're saying. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. After Marcus hung up, I sat in my recliner, emotionally exhausted. The confrontation I'd been avoiding had happened, and I felt both relief and dread. Relief that I'd finally said what needed saying. Dread about what came next. Dorothy knocked on my door an hour later, carrying a container of her famous chili. She took one look at my face and sighed. You told them. Some of it, I admitted, letting her in. David called about visiting. I told him not to bother. Marcus called to yell at me about it. I told him the truth about how I feel. How do you feel? I sank into my chair while she moved to the kitchen, heating up the chili without asking, comfortable in my space in a way my own sons had never been. Like I just blew up my family. Like I'm a terrible father for giving up on my kids. Like I'm finally standing up for myself after years of being taken for granted. All those things can be true simultaneously, Dorothy said, bringing me a bowl. You're allowed to feel complicated about this, Robert. There's no right answer when it comes to family. Did I do the wrong thing, changing my will, confronting them like this? She settled into the chair across from me, her expression thoughtful. I can't answer that. But I can tell you that watching you these past months, watching you slowly realize you deserved better, watching you stop making excuses for their behavior, you seemed to come alive again, like you'd been holding your breath for years and finally exhaled. I feel guilty, I admitted. They're my sons. I'm supposed to love them unconditionally. Love and boundaries aren't mutually exclusive, Dorothy said firmly. You can love them and still refuse to accept being treated poorly. In fact, maybe boundaries are the most loving thing you can do, for them and yourself. My mother would roll over in her grave if she knew I'd cut my sons out of my will. Your mother's not here, you are. And you're the one who has to live with the consequences of your choices, not her, not anyone else, only you. We ate in comfortable silence, and I found myself grateful, again, for this woman who'd shown up when my own family hadn't, who'd become more of a daughter to me in 3 months than David had been a son in years. Thank you, I said quietly, for being here, for giving a damn when my own kids couldn't be bothered. They're fools, Dorothy said bluntly, both of them. You're a good man, Robert Hayes. You deserve sons who see that. Christmas came and went quietly. Marcus sent a text on Christmas morning. Merry Christmas, Dad. Kids want to see you. Can we come by? I responded, not today. Need space. He didn't push. David called on Christmas evening, clearly drunk, rambling about family and regrets, and how I was being unfair. I listened for 5 minutes, then hung up when he started getting belligerent. New Year's Eve, I spent with Dorothy, watching the ball drop on TV, toasting with sparkling cider to new beginnings and authentic relationships. At midnight, my phone buzzed with messages from both sons. Happy New Year, Dad. Love you. I didn't respond to either. January brought bitter cold and the kind of clarity that comes with winter. I started physical therapy for my arm, regaining strength slowly. I attended a support group for seniors that Dorothy recommended, met other older adults, navigating complicated family relationships, heard stories that made mine seem mild, others that validated my feelings, all of them reminding me I wasn't alone in this. It was mid-January when Marcus showed up unannounced. I heard his truck in the driveway, watched through the window as he sat there for a long moment before getting out. He looked tired, older than his 43 years, as he walked to my door. I considered not answering, but that felt cowardly, and I'd promised myself I was done with that. Marcus? I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Dad, can we talk, please? I stepped aside, let him enter. He looked around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time, really seeing it. The photos of him and David as kids, Margaret's presence still evident in her favorite Afghan on the couch, the careful tidiness of a man living alone. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Marcus said, still standing, too nervous to sit. About what you said, about being reciprocal and actually showing up and all of it. And Dad, you're right, I've been a terrible son. I didn't say terrible, but I have been, he interrupted. I got so caught up in my own life, my own stress, my own problems, that I forgot about you. Not forgot exactly, but relegated you to this box of things I'll deal with when I have time. And that's not okay. That's not how I was raised. That's not who I want to be. I sank into my chair, gesturing for him to sit. He perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between his knees like a penitent child. I left you in that hospital, he continued, his voice breaking. I promised 45 minutes and left you there for 7 hours, and then I made excuses instead of taking responsibility. I've been making excuses for years, Dad, for missed calls and forgotten visits, and treating you like an obligation instead of my father. Marcus, no, let me finish, please. He looked up and I saw tears in his eyes. I talked to Keisha, really talked, about you and us and what kind of man I've become. She wasn't gentle about it. Told me I was taking you for granted, that I was teaching our kids it was okay to abandon family when they got inconvenient. She was right. He pulled out his phone, showed me something. A calendar app, filled with reminders. I set up alerts. Call Dad Sunday mornings. Visit Dad every other weekend. Check on Dad Wednesdays. I know it sounds artificial, using technology to remember to care about my own father, but right now, that's what I need. A system to help me rebuild the habit of actually showing up. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was touched by the effort. Part of me was sad that it required calendar alerts for my son to remember I existed. I can't promise I'll be perfect, Marcus said. I'm still going to mess up, probably, but I can promise I'll try, really try, not the half-assed effort I've been giving. You deserve better, Dad. You deserve a son who actually acts like family. Why now? I asked quietly. What changed? He was quiet for a moment. Jaden asked about you, wanted to know why we never see Grandpa anymore, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. I'd been telling myself you were the one being distant, pulling away, but Keisha pointed out that you pulled away after I failed you, after we both failed you, me and David. You didn't abandon us. We abandoned you first. The truth of it sat heavy between us. I don't know if I can trust this, I admitted. Trust that it's real and not just guilt talking, that you'll actually follow through instead of fading away again in a few months. I know, Marcus said. I know I have to earn your trust back. I'm ready to do that, however long it takes. What about David? Marcus's expression darkened. David's in denial, thinks you're overreacting, being dramatic. Says you'll get over it and things will go back to normal. I told him there is no normal to go back to, that we broke something and need to build new. He didn't want to hear it. I wasn't surprised. David had always been better at avoiding uncomfortable truths than facing them. So what now? I asked. Now I show up, Marcus said simply. Every Sunday I call, every other weekend I visit. With the kids if you want them. Alone if you need space. I ask about your life and actually listen to the answers. I introduce you to my friends as my dad, not some obligation. I make you a priority instead of an afterthought. And if you backslide, if life gets busy and I become optional again, then you call me on it immediately. Don't let it fester like before. And if I still can't step up, then, he swallowed hard, then you do what you need to do. Set whatever boundaries protect you. I'll have earned them. We talked for another hour. About specifics, about expectations, about what rebuilding looked like. Marcus asked about my physical therapy, my daily routine, my friendship with Dorothy. Actually asked and actually listened, taking notes on his phone, engaged in a way I hadn't seen from him in years. When he stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. Dad, I love you. I know I haven't shown it well, but I do. You're my father, and you matter to me. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to remember that. I love you too, son, I said, and meant it. But love without action is just words. Show me with your life, not your apologies. I will, he promised, starting now. After he left, I sat in the quiet of my house, processing. Hope warred with skepticism, the desire to believe wrestling with the evidence of years. Could Marcus actually change? Could our relationship be rebuilt on something stronger than obligation? I didn't know, but for the first time in months, I was willing to find out. My will remained unchanged in Gerald's office, but maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't stay that way forever. Or maybe it would. Time would tell which of us, Marcus or me, would prove more committed to change. True to his word, Marcus called that first Sunday, then the next, And the next. Short conversations at first, awkward as we both figured out how to talk to each other without the scripts we'd been using for years. He asked about my week, told me about his kids, his work, the minor dramas of daily life, nothing profound but consistent. The first visit came 2 weeks later. He brought his kids, Jaden, 8, Kayla, 6, and little Marcus Jr., 4. They exploded into my house with the chaotic energy of children, and for a moment I remembered what it felt like when my own boys were small and my house was full of life. "Grandpa!" Jaden launched himself at me, careful of my still healing arm. "Dad says you were sick, but you're better now and we can visit again." I shot Marcus a look. He'd told them I was sick rather than explaining the real rift, protecting them probably, or protecting himself from having to explain his failures. "I'm much better now," I said, hugging my grandson tight. "Missed you, buddy." We spent the afternoon together. I taught Jaden chess, something his father had never had patience for. Kayla insisted on showing me her reading progress, sounding out words from a book she'd brought. Little Marcus just wanted to sit on my lap and play with my watch, content in the simple presence of his grandfather. Marcus helped me fix a leaky faucet, change the furnace filter, handle small tasks that had been piling up. We didn't talk about deep things with the kids around, but there was an ease between us that hadn't existed in years. Or maybe it had never existed, and we were building something new. After they left, the house felt emptier than usual. But it was a good empty, the aftermath of time well spent rather than the hollow silence of abandonment. Dorothy knocked on my door that evening, as had become our routine. I saw the truck. Marcus visited. "With the grandkids," I confirmed. "First time in months." "How do you feel about that?" I considered the question. Cautiously hopeful? It was one visit, Dorothy. One. I need to see if he can sustain it before I let my guard down. "Smart," she agreed. "Guard your heart, Robert, but leave room for the possibility of healing. Don't let past pain blind you to present effort." Her words stayed with me over the following weeks. Marcus did sustain it. Sunday calls became routine. Visits happened every other weekend like clockwork. He started texting me random things during the week, funny signs he saw, articles he thought I'd enjoy, photos of the grandkids. Small things, but they added up to a consistent presence in my life. It was late February when David finally called again. 2 months since our last conversation, longer since we'd spoken with any real substance. "Dad." His voice was formal, guarded. "How are you?" "I'm well, David. How are you?" "I'm calling because Marcus said you two have been talking. Regular visits, apparently. Reconciliation." He said the word like it tasted bitter. "I notice I haven't received the same opportunity." "You haven't asked for it. I shouldn't have to ask to talk to my own father, and I shouldn't have to beg my sons to care whether I'm alive or dead," I countered. "But here we are." Silence. Then, "What do you want from me, Dad? Seriously, you're angry, I get it. I haven't been around enough, but I don't know what you expect. I live 5 hours away. I have a career, a life. I expect you to care, David. Actually care. Not just perform caring when it's convenient. I expect phone calls that aren't obligatory. I expect you to know basic things about my life because you asked, not because someone told you. I expect you to treat me like family instead of a duty you fulfill when the guilt gets too heavy. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's my birthday, David? Silence. What's the name of my physical therapist? What time do I have PT appointments? What book am I currently reading? What did I eat for dinner last night? I wasn't being cruel, just honest. You don't know any of those things because you don't ask, because my daily life doesn't interest you unless it directly impacts yours. I can't know everything about your day-to-day life from 5 hours away. Marcus manages it from 20 minutes away because he makes the effort. You could too, if you wanted to, But you don't want to, David. That's the truth we both keep dancing around. You don't want a relationship with me beyond the bare minimum required to maintain appearances. How can you say that? You're my father, and you're my son, who couldn't be bothered to visit when I broke my arm, who called once in 6 weeks to check on me, who told me to hire help instead of offering to come yourself. Your actions tell me everything I need to know, David. Your words don't change that. I could hear him breathing on the other end, could picture him in his Chicago condo, expensive furniture and modern art, a life carefully curated to reflect success. A life that had no room for an aging father in Detroit. I don't know how to fix this, he said finally, and he sounded lost in a way I hadn't heard since he was a child. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to want to fix it, I said, gentler now. I want you to care enough to figure out what I need instead of waiting for me to spell it out. I want you to be my son again, David. The boy who used to call me from college just to tell me about his day, who came home for weekends because he missed me, not because it was expected. When did you stop being that person? When I grew up, he said quietly. When I built a life that didn't revolve around Detroit and family expectations and being who everyone thought I should be. The honesty surprised me. Is that what I represent to you? Expectations you escaped? Sometimes, he admitted. You and Mom, you had this vision of what our lives should look like. Detroit, family, tradition. Marcus bought into it. I didn't. I wanted something different, something that was mine. And yeah, that meant distance, physical and emotional. You think I don't understand that, David? I built a business from nothing because I wanted something different than what my father had. I get wanting to forge your own path, but you don't have to abandon your family to do it. I didn't abandon... You did, I interrupted, not dramatically, just slowly, over years. Visits became obligations, calls became chores. I became a box to check rather than a person you loved, and maybe that was necessary for you to become who you are, but it left me alone, David. It left me with a son who exists mostly on paper and rarely in practice. I don't know if I can be what you want me to be, he said, and there was real pain in his voice. I don't know if I can be Marcus, calling every Sunday, visiting every other weekend. That's not who I am. I'm not asking you to be Marcus. I'm asking you to be David, my son who I love, who I want in my life, but a version of David who actually shows up, who makes me a priority sometimes instead of never, who doesn't need a crisis to remember I exist. I'll try, he said finally. I can't promise what that looks like, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking. We talked for another 20 minutes. Not healing, exactly, but honest. David told me about his work, about the loneliness of his life in Chicago, about relationships that had failed because he didn't know how to let people in. I told him about my friendship with Dorothy, about physical therapy, about rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. When we hung up, I didn't feel the same cautious hope I'd felt with Marcus. David's wounds went deeper, his resistance stronger. But at least we were talking. At least the door was open. Spring came slowly to Detroit, winter reluctant to release its grip. My arm healed fully, physical therapy ending with praise from my therapist for my commitment and progress. I was 72 and felt it, but also felt stronger than I had in months, not just physically but emotionally. Marcus maintained his consistency. Sunday calls never missed. Visits happened like clockwork. He brought Keisha sometimes, the two of them working together to make me feel included in their family, rather than adjacent to it. We celebrated Jaden's 9th birthday at my house, my grandson insisting he wanted Grandpa's place for his party. The trust was rebuilding, slowly but surely. David called more frequently, not every week like Marcus, but every couple of weeks. Brief conversations, still surface level, but more than before. He visited once in April, A quick weekend trip that felt awkward and forced, but was at least an effort. We toured the Detroit Institute of Arts, something we'd done when he was a kid, and in the galleries, I caught glimpses of the boy he'd been. The one who'd loved learning, who'd asked endless questions, who'd seen wonder in the world. "I miss this," David admitted as we stood before a Diego Rivera mural. "Detroit, I mean. Sometimes. Not enough to move back, but sometimes." "You're always welcome to visit," I said, "not out of obligation, but if you genuinely miss it, miss me, the door's always open." He nodded, and we moved on to the next gallery. Baby steps. It was something. It was early May when Dorothy invited me to dinner with a conspiratorial smile that made me nervous. "My daughter Amanda is visiting from California. I want you to meet her. Properly, not just on a video call." I'd spoken to Amanda several times during our video dinners, enjoyed her sharp wit and obvious devotion to her mother. Meeting her in person felt significant in a way I couldn't quite name. Amanda Chen was 54, a college professor with her mother's warmth and a directness that reminded me of Margaret. We hit it off immediately, talking about Detroit history, her academic specialty, the changes in the city, the challenges of aging parents and adult children. "Mum talks about you constantly," Amanda said over dessert, her smile fond. "Robert this, Robert that." I was starting to get jealous. "Your mother saved my sanity," I said honestly. "Maybe my life. I was in a dark place when she decided to intervene." "She's good at that," Amanda agreed, "intervening whether you want her to or not. It's a teacher thing." Dorothy swatted her daughter playfully. "I prefer to think of it as caring." "It is caring," I confirmed. "The kind that actually matters." After Amanda went to bed, Dorothy and I sat on her porch, watching the spring evening settle over the neighborhood. "She likes you," Dorothy said. "Told me you remind her of her father. High praise. She adored him." "I like her too. You raised a good kid." "So did you," Dorothy said. "They just lost their way for a while, but Marcus is finding his way back, and maybe David will too in his own time." Maybe. I was less optimistic about David, but I'd learned not to close doors completely. "Dorothy, can I ask you something?" "Always." "When you updated your will, did you ever consider cutting your kids out? When they disappointed you or hurt you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Once, years ago, when Amanda went through a phase of blaming me for everything wrong in her life, said some cruel things, didn't talk to me for 2 years. I was hurt, angry. Updated my will to leave everything to charity, just to make a point. What changed? I did. I realized I was using my will as a weapon, trying to punish her into changing. That's not love, Robert. That's manipulation. So I changed it back and just waited. Eventually, she came around, did the work to heal our relationship, but if I'd left that will in place, if she'd found out after I died, it would have poisoned whatever healing we'd achieved. Her words hit hard. "You think I'm using my will as a weapon? I think you're hurt and angry, and those are valid feelings. But I also think you need to ask yourself what you're really trying to accomplish. Are you protecting yourself, or are you trying to punish your sons into being different people?" I thought about Marcus's consistent effort, the slow rebuilding of trust. Thought about David's halting attempts to connect, insufficient but genuine. Thought about my will, sitting in Gerald's office, a bomb waiting to detonate after my death. "I don't know anymore," I admitted. "When I changed it, I was clear. They'd failed me, and I didn't want to reward that. But now, Marcus is trying, really trying, and David, in his own way, is trying too. Is it fair to punish them for who they were when they're actively working to be better?" "Only you can answer that, Robert. But ask yourself, do you want to die with this rift between you? Because that's what leaving that will unchanged means. You die, they find out they've been cut out, and any healing that's happening stops. All that's left is hurt and anger and regret. That night I couldn't sleep, lay in bed thinking about Dorothy's words, about my sons, about the legacy I wanted to leave. Margaret used to say that the measure of a life wasn't what you accumulated, but what you gave and who you loved. What was I giving my sons except punishment? What was I teaching them except that mistakes were unforgivable? But they hadn't just made mistakes. They'd abandoned me, neglected me, treated me like an inconvenience. Didn't that deserve consequences? The internal argument continued for days. I watched Marcus play with his kids in my backyard, saw the intentionality in his presence, listened to David's phone calls, heard him actually ask questions and listen to answers. Saw two men trying to be better sons, even if they weren't there yet. It was Dorothy's birthday in late May. Her kids flew in, Amanda from California, her son Daniel from Seattle. I was invited to the small party, treated like family, included in the celebration. Watched the way her children doted on her, the genuine affection and respect evident in every interaction. This is what it should look like, I thought. Not perfect, but present. Not obligation, but love. After the party, I called Gerald Morrison. "Robert, good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm well, Gerald. Listen, I need to revise my will again." A pause. "Both sons back in?" "Marcus, yes. David?" I hesitated. "I want to create a structure, not equal splits, but not complete exclusion either. Can we do that?" We spent an hour on the phone, crafting something that felt fair. Marcus would inherit the bulk of my estate, the house, the majority of savings, my business assets. Not as a reward, exactly, but as recognition of his effort, his presence, his choice to rebuild our relationship. David would receive a smaller portion, enough to know he wasn't forgotten, not enough to reward his minimal effort. A message. I see you trying, and it matters, but actions have consequences. Dorothy still received a significant bequest, thanks for her friendship when I needed it most. The charities remained, my legacy beyond family. And I included letters, personal explanations to each son about my choices, about what I'd needed from them, about the pain of their absence and the hope for their presence. Not angry letters, but honest ones. A final conversation, preserved for after I was gone. "This feels right," Gerald said when we finished. "Balanced. Acknowledging both the hurt and the healing." "It's the best I can do," I agreed. "Love them both, but I can't pretend the past didn't happen. Can't reward behavior that hurt me, but I can acknowledge growth and effort and the possibility of continued healing." The new will was signed and witnessed in early June. I felt lighter afterward, like I'd been carrying a weight I could finally set down. Marcus's next visit, I almost told him, almost said, "I've updated my will, put you back in, recognized your effort." But I held back. Because his effort shouldn't be about inheritance. It should be about our relationship, about him wanting to be my son, regardless of what he might receive when I was gone. Summer came, hot and humid, Detroit in full bloom. My grandchildren spent a week with me in July, Marcus and Keisha taking a much-needed vacation. I taught them to fish at a local lake, made them my famous pancakes, let them stay up too late watching movies. Being grandpa again, active and present, felt like reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost. David visited again in August. Stayed for 4 days this time, the longest he'd been in Detroit in years. We attended a Tigers game, toured some of the city's revitalization projects, had long conversations on my porch about life and regret and the people we'd become. "I'm trying, Dad," he said on his last evening. "I know it's not enough, not compared to Marcus, but I'm trying to be better than I was." "I see that," I said honestly. "And it matters, David. You matter. I just need you to keep trying, keep showing up." Even from Chicago, even with your busy life. Find ways to be present that work for you. I will, he promised. I don't want to lose you, Dad. Took me almost doing exactly that to realize it. But I don't. We hugged goodbye the next morning, and it felt different than hugs in recent years. Less obligatory, more genuine. Still fragile, still a work in progress, but real. September brought my 73rd birthday. Marcus threw me a party, small, intimate, family and close friends. Dorothy and her daughter Amanda, who was visiting again, a few neighbors, Keisha's parents, who I'd always liked, my grandchildren, who made me a banner that read, "World's Best Grandpa" in crayon and glitter. David flew in, surprising me. "Couldn't miss your birthday," he said simply. "Not this year." We gathered in my backyard, the one I'd worked on all summer with Marcus's help. New flower beds, a repaired fence, a small patio where we could all fit comfortably. Margaret would have loved it, I thought, would have loved seeing our family gathered, healing, trying. As the sun set and the party wound down, Marcus pulled me aside. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right, for not giving up on me even when I deserved it. These past months, rebuilding our relationship, it's been the most important thing I've done in years. You did the work, son. I just opened the door. You did more than that. You held me accountable, called me on my bullshit, refused to accept less than I was capable of giving. That took courage, especially when it would have been easier to just accept the scraps I was offering." I hugged him tight, this son who'd failed me and then fought to do better. "I'm proud of you, Marcus, not just for showing up now, but for having the humility to admit you'd been wrong and the strength to change." David approached as Marcus headed back to the party. We stood together in the growing darkness, watching our family, his nieces and nephews playing, Marcus helping Keisha clean up, Dorothy laughing with Amanda. "I know I'm not where Marcus is," David said quietly. "And maybe I never will be. I don't think I can be the son who calls every Sunday and visits every other weekend. That's just not who I am." "I know," I said, "and I'm learning to accept that. You and Marcus are different people, need different things, express love differently. I can't expect you to show up the same way he does, but I can do better than I have been," David continued. "More calls, more visits, actually knowing what's happening in your life, being present in the ways I can be, even from 5 hours away. That's all I'm asking, son. Just be present in your own way. Make me a priority sometimes instead of never. That's enough." We stood in comfortable silence, and I realized this was healing too. Not the dramatic reconciliation of movies, but the slow, messy, imperfect work of real relationships. Two men learning to love each other better, one conversation at a time. The party ended late. After everyone left, I sat on my porch with Dorothy, both of us tired and happy. "That was a good party," she said. "Good to see your boys showing up for you." "Yeah," I agreed. "It was. You seem lighter than I've seen you in months, more at peace." I thought about my revised will, about the letters I'd written, about the careful balance I'd struck between acknowledging hurt and allowing healing. I think I finally figured out what I needed to do. Not punish them, but not pretend the pain didn't happen either. Hold them accountable while leaving room for growth. "That's wisdom right there," Dorothy said, "and hard-won wisdom at that. Couldn't have done it without you. You know that, right? You showed me what actual care looks like. Gave me something to measure their behavior against. I just did what neighbors should do," she protested. "No, you did what family should do, and you became mine when my own couldn't be bothered. That matters, Dorothy. More than you know." We sat until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing, the easy companionship of real friendship. Inside my house, birthday cards from my sons sat on the mantel. Marcus's funny and heartfelt. David's more formal but genuine. Evidence of effort, of presence, of slow healing. I thought about that day in the emergency room, about 7 hours of waiting, about the moment I'd decided I deserved better. That decision had led here, to difficult conversations and changed wills and confrontations that had hurt us all. But also to Marcus's consistent presence, David's halting efforts, Dorothy's friendship, and this birthday surrounded by people who actually cared. Had I done the right thing? Cutting them out, forcing the confrontation, demanding better? I still didn't know for sure. But sitting on my porch, 73 years old, healing relationships on one side and genuine friendship on the other, I thought maybe I had. Maybe sometimes the most loving thing you could do was refuse to accept being treated poorly. Maybe boundaries and consequences were necessary for real change. Marcus had said, "Wait here, I'll be back," and hadn't come back for 7 hours. That betrayal had catalyzed everything. My anger, my decision to change my will, my confrontation with both sons about their behavior. It had been the moment that forced me to stop making excuses and start demanding better. And they'd risen to meet that demand. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely. Marcus especially, but even David in his own way. They were becoming better sons because I'd refused to accept being a forgotten father. My will now reflected that journey. Not the angry exclusion of my first revision, but not the blind equality of the original either. Something nuanced, acknowledging both the pain of the past and the hope of the present. Recognition that relationships required effort, that love needed action to mean anything, that inheritance should reflect reality rather than wishful thinking. October brought crisp air and falling leaves. Marcus and I raked my yard together, his kids jumping in the piles we made, their laughter filling the autumn afternoon. Simple moments, the kind I'd thought I'd lost forever. David called during the World Series, something we'd watched together when he was young. We stayed on the phone for 3 innings, arguing about plays and managers and reminiscing about games we'd attended when he was a kid. Not profound, but connected. Present. Dorothy's daughter Amanda visited again in November, staying 2 weeks this time. We had several dinners together, the 4 of us, me and Dorothy, Amanda, and sometimes Marcus. Easy friendship, chosen family, the kind of relationships built on mutual care rather than obligation. Thanksgiving came, and this year I didn't decline Marcus's invitation. Went to his house, played with my grandchildren, helped Keisha in the kitchen, felt like part of a family again. David called during dinner, talking to everyone, his voice warm in a way it hadn't been in years. "We miss you, brother," Marcus said into the phone. "You should try to make it for Christmas." "I'll try," David promised. "No guarantees, but I'll try." That night, driving home with leftovers in containers on my passenger seat, I thought about the year that had passed. 12 months since that broken arm, that 7-hour wait, that moment of clarity that I deserved better. So much had changed. My relationship with Marcus, rebuilt on honesty and effort. My relationship with David, fragile but improving. My friendship with Dorothy, a gift I hadn't known I needed. My relationship with myself, stronger and clearer about what I would and wouldn't accept. And my will now a reflection of all of it, not a weapon but a truth. Not punishment but consequence. Not rejection, but honest accounting of who had shown up and who hadn't, who had tried to make amends and who had continued with minimal effort. Marcus would be provided for, his effort recognized. David would receive enough to know he wasn't forgotten, not enough to ignore his years of absence. Dorothy would be thanked for her genuine care. Charities would benefit from my life's work. And letters would explain it all, give my sons one final conversation about what I'd needed, what had hurt, and what had healed. It felt right, balanced, fair in a way that honored both my pain and my love. I pulled into my driveway, looked at my house. Warm lights in the windows, Dorothy's porch light on next door, the neighborhood I'd lived in for 40 years. This was home. This was the life I'd built, the legacy I'd leave. Not perfect, definitely not perfect, but honest, real. Built on boundaries and consequences and the radical act of demanding to be treated with dignity and care. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Thanks for coming today, Dad. It meant everything to the kids, to me too. Love you." I smiled, typing back, "Love you too, son. See you Sunday." Another text, this one from David. "Happy Thanksgiving, Dad. Wish I could have been there. Working on making Christmas happen. You deserve to have both your sons around." "You do too," I replied. "Keep trying, David. It matters." I climbed out of my car, juggling containers of food, and Dorothy appeared on her porch. "Good Thanksgiving?" she called. "The best in years," I called back. "You?" "Perfect. Amanda's making pie. Come over for dessert?" "Give me 20 minutes to put this food away. Take your time, we'll be here." I went inside my house, put away the leftovers, changed into comfortable clothes. Looked at the framed photos on my mantel, Margaret smiling in our wedding photo, the boys as children, recent pictures of my grandchildren. Marcus had brought a new frame, a candid shot from my birthday party. Me in the center, surrounded by family, actually smiling, actually happy. This was the life I'd almost given up on, the family I'd almost written off completely, the healing I'd thought was impossible. It had required hard choices, painful conversations, consequences that hurt us all. Boundaries that felt cruel even as they were necessary, a willingness to blow up what wasn't working and build something new from the rubble. But here on the other side, I could see it had been worth it. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. David was still distant. Marcus still occasionally forgot to call. Old wounds still ached on hard days. But the trajectory had changed. The effort was real. The love was expressed in actions, not just words. And I had learned something crucial. Demanding better didn't make you a bad father. Setting boundaries didn't make you unloving. Refusing to accept being treated poorly was an act of self-respect, not selfishness. My sons had said, "Wait here, I'll be back," and hadn't come back. That abandonment had led to this, to changed wills and hard conversations and the slow, difficult work of rebuilding. But it had also led to this moment, standing in my kitchen, heading to share pie with chosen family, secure in relationships built on honesty rather than obligation. I grabbed my jacket and headed next door. Dorothy opened before I could knock, Amanda behind her with plates of pie. "Robert, perfect timing. We were just talking about you." "All good things, I hope." "The best things," Amanda confirmed. "Mom was telling me about your birthday party. Sounds like it was wonderful." We settled in Dorothy's living room, eating pie, talking, laughing. Simple happiness, the kind that comes from being with people who genuinely care, who show up not because they have to, but because they want to. This was family, not blood, though that mattered too, but chosen, built, maintained through consistent care and genuine presence. This was what I'd been teaching my sons to value, to prioritize, to understand as necessary, and slowly, painfully, beautifully, they were learning. My phone buzzed again. Marcus sending a photo of the kids in their pajamas, ready for bed. They're asking if Grandpa can read them a story over video call. I smiled, excusing myself from Dorothy and Amanda. Pulled up the video call, saw 3 sleepy faces appear on screen. "Grandpa!" they chorused. "Hey, kiddos, heard you need a bedtime story." "The one about the little engine?" Marcus Jr. demanded. I read them the story, voices and all, hearing their giggles, watching their eyes grow heavy. Marcus appeared at the end, taking the phone after they'd said goodnight. "Thanks, Dad. This is becoming their favorite part of Thursdays, having you read to them." "Mine too," I said honestly. "Same time next week?" "Absolutely. Love you, Dad." "Love you too, son." I returned to Dorothy's living room, to pie and friendship and easy laughter. Thought about my will in Gerald's office, about the legacy I was leaving, not just money and property, but lessons. About boundaries and consequences, about effort and presence, about the difference between performing love and actually living it. Marcus was learning those lessons. David was starting to. And me? I was learning too, that it was never too late to demand better, to set boundaries, to rebuild on firmer ground. The story of that 7-hour wait had become the story of a year of transformation, of a father who decided he deserved better, and sons who'd risen, or were rising, to meet that standard. Of pain that led to growth, consequences that led to change, and boundaries that led to genuine healing. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I'd first changed my will in anger. But it was better. More honest, more nuanced, more real. My sons had failed me. I had held them accountable. They were working to do better. I was learning to recognize that effort while still honoring my hurt. And somewhere in that messy, imperfect, ongoing process, we were becoming family again. Not the version we'd pretended to be, but something truer. Something built on honesty and effort and the radical belief that people could change if the consequences were clear and the love was real enough. Outside Dorothy's window, the November night was full dark, stars brilliant in the cold sky. Inside, warmth and friendship and the simple joy of being seen, valued, cared for. I'd waited 7 hours in that emergency room, my son's promise broken, my trust shattered. But from that breaking had come this building, this choosing, this life that honored truth over comfort, boundaries over blind acceptance, genuine presence over performed obligation. My sons were learning. I was healing. We were all becoming better versions of ourselves. And that, I thought, was a legacy worth leaving.